When David James took the stand, it was like the life drained out of Diddy. The man who once made his breakfast was now exposing his darkest secrets.
He talked about spending time with Cassie and how Cassie said that she really couldn't leave Diddy because she was kind of stuck there.
But James didn't stop with Cassie. He went even further, revealing disturbing details that left Diddy looking like he'd seen a ghost. Let me fill you in. The bombshell witness. From the moment David James entered the courtroom, he appeared visibly nervous, and the reason became clear as soon as he started speaking. This man had seen things. He had been in Diddy's world, and he was about to tell everything.
And very nervous. When he got to the stand, he had some tears. And just for reference, he worked for Diddy from May 2007 to May 2009.
When James began his testimony, he immediately became emotional as he described his interview process at Bad Boy Entertainment. He recounted how the head of HR at Bad Boy, a woman named Vashta, pointed to a picture of Diddy during his interview and said, "This is Mr. Combs' kingdom. We are here to serve him. Not we're a team or we're a family, but we are here to serve him." That's giving cult leader vibes, not employer vibes. James became emotional recounting this moment, suggesting it had a profound impact on him. Can you imagine going to a job interview and being told your sole purpose is to serve one man as if he's some kind of king? That's like applying to work at McDonald's and being told your job is to worship Ronald McDonald. During his job interview, James recalled telling Diddy, "I can't stop, won't stop," a reference to one of Diddy's catchphrases, and Diddy nodded in approval. Little did James know what he was signing up for when he got the job. What James described next about his daily duties was absolutely shocking. He testified that he would often work 20-hour days, sometimes for 3 weeks straight with no break.
He basically testified that he sometimes worked from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m. and he made $70,000, and he sometimes got overtime.
His starting salary, just $70,000 a year with some overtime. For context, that's about $100,000 in today's money, which is still not enough for what he had to do. His daily duties included arriving at Diddy's house before he woke up, preparing his business documents, turning on his preferred TV channel, working with the chef on Diddy's breakfast, and knocking on Diddy's door to see if he was ready to wake up. Then he'd accompany Diddy to everything he had scheduled that day, including dinner, whether personal or business, studio sessions, and whatever was going on afterward. Talk about a 24/7 job. James would also have to text the security team with the next day's call time, basically telling them when to show up the following day. This man was basically running Diddy's entire life. And guess what? He saw something very concerning. One of the security guards carrying a knife. That's not normal security procedure, fam. But the most shocking part of his testimony came when he discussed his interactions with Cassie.
He talked about seeing one of the security guards carry a knife. He talked about spending time with Cassie and how Cassie said that she really couldn't leave Diddy because she was kind of stuck there.
That's not a relationship. That's financial imprisonment. James also mentioned several of Diddy's girlfriends by name: Kim Porter, Sarah, Tara, Yana, and Cassie, showing that Diddy had multiple relationships going on simultaneously. This corroborates what we've heard from other witnesses about Diddy's controlling behavior and his pattern of maintaining multiple relationships at once. The reaction in the courtroom as James testified was palpable. Observers noted that Diddy appeared uncomfortable, shifting in his seat and occasionally shaking his head. This wasn't just any witness. This was someone who had seen how Diddy operated behind closed doors, who had been part of his inner circle, and who now was telling the world what he saw. As James continued his testimony, jurors were seen taking extensive notes, a sign they found his testimony credible and important. Remember, there are 18 jurors in total, 12 main jurors and 6 alternates, and according to courtroom observers, they were all paying close attention to James. That's not good news for Team Diddy. What makes James such a crucial witness is his credibility. Unlike some other witnesses who might have personal grudges against Diddy or financial motivations like lawsuits, James appeared to be a reluctant witness who was simply telling the truth about what he experienced. His emotional response when recalling his time working for Diddy suggests that the experience had a profound impact on him, one that still affects him years later. One thing that's super important to note is that James is testifying as part of the prosecution's case, meaning he's helping build the government's argument that Diddy ran a criminal enterprise. His testimony connects to the broader pattern of alleged abuse, control, and coercion that multiple witnesses have described. The prosecution team, led by Maureen Comey, yes, related to that Comey, she's the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, has been methodically building their case with testimony from various people in Diddy's orbit. David James is the 7th witness for the prosecution, following testimony from Cassie Ventura, Kerry Morgan, Dawn Richard, and others, who have painted a disturbing picture of life around Diddy. But here's the thing, James's testimony wasn't over when court adjourned on day 6. There was more to come, and the anticipation of what else he might reveal had everyone on the edge of their seats. The court adjourned at 3 p.m., with James expected to continue his testimony the next day. So why was Diddy looking so pale when James took the stand? Because James knows things that could potentially make or break this case. His position as a personal assistant meant he saw Diddy in unguarded moments, witnessed his interactions with Cassie and others, and potentially observed the power dynamics that are central to the prosecution's case. The charges against Diddy are serious: racketeering, trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. If convicted, he could face life in prison. That's why every witness matters, and why James's testimony could be so damaging to Diddy's defense. What we've learned so far from the trial paints a disturbing picture of power, control, and alleged abuse. From Dawn Richard testifying about witnessing Diddy's violence toward Cassie, to Kerry Morgan describing Diddy's assault on her with a wooden hanger, to now David James revealing the extent of Diddy's control over Cassie's life and career. The prosecution is building a case that Diddy wasn't just a bad boyfriend. He was the head of a criminal enterprise that used threats, violence, drugs, bribery, arson, kidnapping, and lies to manipulate people. That's not just toxic behavior, that's criminal behavior. And let's not forget that all of this is happening with Cassie Ventura, Diddy's ex-girlfriend and alleged victim, being heavily pregnant in the courtroom. The contrast between her current life, married with children, and the nightmare she allegedly endured with Diddy couldn't be more stark. Now let's go inside Diddy's kingdom. The physical layout of Diddy's world as described by James tells us a lot about the power dynamics at play. James testified that he helped manage Diddy's homes in both Alpine, New Jersey, and Miami. These weren't just houses, they were compounds where Diddy could control who came and went, what happened inside, and who knew about it. The prosecution is arguing that Diddy used these properties as part of his alleged criminal enterprise, hosting parties and events where the alleged trafficking, and other crimes took place. James's testimony about managing these properties and coordinating security provides context for how these operations might have been structured. James also testified about preparing rooms in hotels, concerts, and other venues according to a specific list of requirements Diddy had. This level of control over his environment further supports the prosecution's portrayal of Diddy as someone who micromanaged every aspect of his world and the people in it. What's particularly interesting is James's emotional reaction during parts of his testimony. Court observers noted that he became tearful when recounting his job interview and the statement about Diddy's kingdom. This suggests that his experiences working for Diddy had a profound and lasting impact on him, adding credibility to his testimony.
And when he had the tears first, he was talking about getting the job and how he sat down with the head of HR at Bad Boy Records. Her name was Vashta.
One of the most revealing aspects of James's testimony was his description of how he was instructed to organize and coordinate Diddy's schedule, security, and households. This wasn't just about being a good assistant. It was about maintaining an infrastructure that, according to prosecutors, facilitated Diddy's alleged criminal activity. James testified that he was responsible for coordinating with Diddy's security team, which included individuals with nicknames like D-Rock and Uncle Paulie. The presence of armed security, even if with legal weapons, suggests a level of protection and isolation that could have enabled alleged criminal activity to continue unchecked. But let's talk about the real tea, the connections between James's testimony and the broader allegations in the case. James's description of Diddy's controlling behavior and the power dynamics in his organization directly supports the prosecution's argument that Diddy ran an enterprise based on fear, control, and exploitation. The prosecution has alleged that Diddy and his inner circle used threats, violence, drugs, bribery, arson, kidnapping, and lies to manipulate individuals. James's testimony about the intense work expectations, the instruction to stay in his lane, and the presence of armed security all paint a picture of an organization where questioning authority wasn't tolerated. This is particularly relevant to the racketeering charge, which requires proving that Diddy was the head of an organized criminal enterprise. James's testimony helps establish the structure of that alleged enterprise and Diddy's role at the top of it. It's worth noting that James's testimony comes after several other witnesses have already painted a damning picture of Diddy's behavior. Cassie Ventura testified over 4 days, describing alleged physical and abuse, including being forced to participate in what she called freak-offs, performances involving male escorts. Dawn Richard testified about witnessing Diddy physically assault Cassie and making threats to keep people quiet. And Kerry Morgan testified about Diddy assaulting her with a wooden hanger. James's testimony adds another piece to this puzzle, helping to establish a pattern of behavior that spans years and involves multiple victims and witnesses. The fact that these witnesses are all describing similar behavior, despite coming from different parts of Diddy's life, strengthens the prosecution's case. But what makes James particularly credible is that he appears to have no axe to grind. Unlike some other witnesses witnesses who have filed civil lawsuits against Diddy, there's no indication that James has any financial motivation for his testimony. He's simply telling what he saw and experienced during his time working for Diddy. There's also something particularly powerful about hearing these allegations from a male witness. In cases involving alleged abuse and control of women, having a man corroborate the women's accounts can unfortunately add credibility in the eyes of some jurors. James's testimony that Cassie told him she felt trapped because Diddy controlled her career and finances directly supports her account of feeling coerced and unable to leave. The defense, of course, is likely to try to poke holes in James's testimony when it's their turn for cross-examination. They might question his memory of events that happened over 15 years ago, suggest he's exaggerating the control Diddy had, or try to paint him as disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind. But based on courtroom observations, James appeared to be a reluctant but honest witness, becoming emotional at times but straightforward in his account of what he saw and experienced. That kind of authentic testimony can be very compelling for a jury. As James's testimony continued, it became increasingly clear why Diddy might have looked pale when he took the stand. This wasn't just any witness. This was someone who had been in the inner circle, who had seen how the operation worked from the inside, and who was now telling everything he knew. One of the most striking aspects of James's testimony was the mundane detail with which he described extraordinary circumstances. He talked about arranging Diddy's schedule, coordinating security, and managing households as if these were normal job duties, but the context he described was anything but normal. For example, James testified about working with the chef to prepare Diddy's breakfast exactly as he liked it, a small detail, but one that illustrates the level of control and perfectionism that apparently characterized Diddy's world. Every aspect of his environment had to be just right, and it was James's job to make sure of that. This level of control extended to the people around Diddy as well. James testified that he witnessed Cassie expressing frustration about her situation, saying she felt trapped because Diddy controlled every aspect of her life, her career, her finances, her housing. That's not a relationship, that's ownership. The timing of James's employment is also significant. He worked for Diddy from 2007 to 2009, which overlaps with the early years of Diddy's relationship with Cassie. This means he was present during the formative period of that relationship, when the patterns of behavior that would allegedly characterize it were being established. James's testimony also provides context for some of the specific incidents other witnesses have described. For instance, Dawn Richard testified about an incident in 2009 where Diddy allegedly assaulted Cassie with a skillet when she didn't have his eggs ready. James's testimony about the rigid expectations and intense pressure within Diddy's household helps explain how such a seemingly minor issue could escalate to violence. What's particularly disturbing about James's testimony is the way it normalizes extraordinary behavior. The fact that he worked 20-hour days, was expected to be available at all times, and had to manage every aspect of Diddy's life was presented as just part of the job. But this kind of expectation is far from normal. It's exploitative and reflects the power imbalance that prosecutors allege was central to Diddy's criminal enterprise.
Then they would go to the studio, and then after studio, it would be like whatever was going on. We didn't hear many details about that, but then he said they would figure out the call time to know when to be back the next day, and he would text this out to all the security guards.
James's testimony about overhearing a conversation where Diddy described Cassie as moldable is particularly disturbing in this context. It suggests that Diddy viewed Cassie not as a partner, but as someone he could shape and control according to his desires, exactly the kind of mindset that would enable the exploitation alleged in the indictment. As James continued his testimony, observers noted the contrast between his emotional moments and his matter-of-fact description of extraordinary demands and circumstances. This contradiction, being emotionally affected by recounting events that he presented as normal at the time, suggests that it's only with distance and perspective that he's been able to recognize how abnormal his working conditions actually were. This is common in situations involving high-control groups or individuals. Those within the system often normalize extraordinary behavior because they have no point of comparison. It's only when they leave that they can see how abnormal their experiences were. James's emotional reactions during his testimony suggest he's had this kind of realization about his time working for Diddy. What's also significant about James' testimony is what it reveals about the people around Diddy who enabled his alleged behavior. James mentioned coordinating with security, household staff, and other assistants, all of whom played roles in maintaining the system Diddy had created. This supports the prosecution's argument that this was truly an enterprise, not just the actions of one individual. What comes next? Let's first talk about why James' testimony is so powerful from a legal perspective. The charges against Diddy aren't just about being a bad boyfriend or a demanding boss. They're serious federal charges that could send him to prison for life. We're talking racketeering, trafficking, and transportation to engage in prostitution. That's not celebrity gossip territory, that's major criminal behavior. For the racketeering charge, prosecutors need to prove that Diddy ran an organized criminal enterprise. Essentially, that Bad Boy Entertainment wasn't just a legitimate business, but also a criminal operation. This requires showing a pattern of criminal activity and an organizational structure that facilitated that activity. For the sex trafficking charges, prosecutors need to prove that Diddy used force, fraud, or coercion to make Cassie and others engage in commercial sex acts. This is where James's testimony about Cassie feeling trapped because Diddy controlled her career, finances, and housing becomes crucial. It supports the coercion element of the charge by showing that Cassie felt she had no choice but to comply with Diddy's demands, and James isn't the only one backing up this narrative. Let's look at how his testimony connects with what other witnesses have said. Cassie Ventura testified over 4 days, describing years of alleged physical and sexual abuse. She detailed being forced to participate in freak-offs, events where she was allegedly coerced into performing sexual acts with male escorts while Diddy watched. James's testimony about the control Diddy exerted over her life corroborates her account of feeling trapped and unable to leave. That's like your friend telling you they're in a toxic relationship, and then their coworker confirms that they've seen the partner being controlling and manipulative. Dawn Richard testified about witnessing Diddy physically assault Cassie, including an incident in 2009 where he allegedly beat her with a skillet and dragged her by the hair. She also claimed that Diddy threatened her and others, saying, "People who say something can end up missing." James's testimony about the atmosphere of control and fear in Diddy's organization provides context for how such threats could be credible.
There's a drug dealer called One Stop. That's hilarious.
That's a crazy name.
Weed, ecstasy, Plan Bs.
Dawn said Plan Bs. I was like, wait, what? Plan B.
That's a good drug dealer.
Carrie Morgan testified about Diddy assaulting her with a wooden hanger when he stormed into Cassie's house looking for her. She also described how Cassie later paid her $30,000 to sign an NDA about the incident. James's testimony about Diddy's controlling behavior and his outbursts adds credibility to Morgan's account. The consistency across these witness testimonies is damning. Each witness is describing the same patterns of behavior from different perspectives, creating a comprehensive picture of life in Diddy's orbit. It's like if 4 different people who don't know each other all described your ex the exact same way. At some point, you have to admit they might be right. Imagine testifying about something that happened over 15 years ago and still getting emotional. That's not something you can fake. It's like running into your middle school bully as an adult and still feeling that knot in your stomach. The defense team, led by attorneys Mark Agnifilo and Tenny Giragos, will undoubtedly try to counter James's testimony during cross-examination. They've already started their strategy with previous witnesses, trying to portray the alleged victims as willing participants who benefited from their association with Diddy. With Cassie, they presented text messages suggesting she was enthusiastic about the freak-offs and highlighted that she continued to communicate with Diddy and even had consensual sex with him after she alleged he raped her. With Dawn Richard, they pointed out inconsistencies in her testimony and suggested she had financial motives for speaking out, as she has a pending civil lawsuit against Diddy.
I want you to describe the range of emotions she really went through, but also where it went, because at the end of the testimony, and you tell me if I'm wrong, it felt like she was almost saying, I don't really want him to go to jail. She was like, I still have love for him.
With James, they might try a different approach. They could question his memory of events that happened over 15 years ago, suggest he's exaggerating the control Diddy had, or try to paint him as a disgruntled former employee. But based on his emotional yet measured testimony, these tactics may be less effective than they were with other witnesses. One of the most interesting aspects of James's testimony is what it reveals about the broader culture of celebrity and power in the entertainment industry. The idea that extreme demands and boundary violations are just part of the job when working for powerful figures is being increasingly challenged, and James's testimony contributes to this reckoning. His account raises uncomfortable questions about who else might have known about or enabled the alleged behavior. James mentioned numerous other employees, security personnel, and associates who were part of Diddy's world, many of whom might also have stories to tell if they chose to come forward. In particular, there's been speculation about a woman named Christina Karam, sometimes referred to as KK, who has been described as a key figure in Diddy's organization. Some have compared her role to that of Ghislaine Maxwell in the case, someone who allegedly helped facilitate and conceal abuse. While she hasn't been charged with any crimes, her name has come up repeatedly in the trial, and there's speculation she might be called as a witness.
One person who, her name keeps getting brought up, Christina Karam, KK.
Yes.
She seems like very important, and number one,
she got brought up today too. Multiple times.
Number one, I don't think she'll ever work with the government. She looks like one of them that'll go to jail for Diddy.
The trial is also taking place against the backdrop of broader societal conversations about power, abuse, and accountability. The #MeToo movement has led to increased awareness of how powerful figures can use their status to exploit others, and Diddy's case is being seen as a test of whether that accountability extends to the music industry. There have been other allegations of similar behavior in the music industry that haven't resulted in criminal charges. For example, R. Kelly was convicted of sex trafficking in a case with some parallels to Diddy's, but many other allegations against music industry figures have not been pursued as vigorously. The outcome of Diddy's trial could signal whether there's a broader shift in how such cases are handled.
R. Kelly's a perfect situation. So R. Kelly was charged.
They did that to bring in all those crimes in the 90s.
Yes.
This dissonance between public persona and private behavior is something we've seen with other high-profile cases. From Harvey Weinstein, the ability of powerful figures to maintain a positive public image while allegedly engaging in abusive behavior behind closed doors speaks to the systems that enable and protect them. Systems that witnesses like James are now helping to expose. It's like finding out that the Instagram influencer who posts about positivity and kindness is actually the meanest person you know IRL. The trial is also raising questions about the role of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, in concealing alleged misconduct. Carrie Morgan testified about signing an NDA in exchange for $30,000 after Diddy allegedly assaulted her. There have been references to other NDAs as well, suggesting a pattern of using legal agreements to silence potential witnesses.
And, it was also kind of like a weird moment because she was asked, well, why haven't you guys kind of like rekindled? I mean, she's not with Sean Combs. She's moved on, is what Agnifilo is saying. She has kids now. And Carrie Morgan's like, well, she could have called me too.
This use of NDAs to conceal alleged criminal behavior has been increasingly scrutinized in recent years, with some states passing laws limiting their use in cases of sexual harassment or assault. The Diddy trial may add momentum to these efforts by highlighting how NDAs can be used not just to protect legitimate business interests, but to hide potential crimes. The trial is also shining a light on the importance of male witnesses in cases involving alleged abuse of women. In a society where women's accounts of abuse are often doubted or dismissed, having a male witness like James corroborate their allegations can be particularly powerful. His testimony that Cassie told him she felt trapped because Diddy controlled her career and finances directly supports her account of feeling coerced and unable to leave. This isn't to say that women's testimony shouldn't be enough on their own. They absolutely should be. But the reality is that having diverse witnesses, all describing the same patterns of behavior, creates a more comprehensive and convincing case. It's like if everyone at a party saw someone steal your phone, not just the people you came with. As the trial continues, there are still more witnesses expected to testify, including Regina Ventura, Cassie's mother, a male escort, a former personal chef, and a law enforcement officer. Each will add another piece to the puzzle the jury must ultimately solve. Stay tuned for more updates as this landmark trial continues to unfold. The truth is finally coming to light, and no amount of fame, money, or power can keep it hidden forever. And that, my friends, is the real tea. From getting hit with charges that shook the industry to its core to making a 180 after getting exposed,
I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
Diddy's case has had us all locked in from day one, and now that the trial has officially started, word is he's showing real remorse and finally revealing everything in court. There's a lot of courtroom drama unfolding, and I'm here to break it all down. Diddy's court apology. So check it. The federal sex trafficking and racketeering trial of Sean Diddy Combs officially kicked off with jury selection on May 5th, 2025 in the Manhattan Federal Courthouse. The trial has been drawing crazy attention from media outlets and fans alike, with everyone wondering what's actually happening behind those courtroom doors. The kind of attention this trial is getting, it's not just your average celebrity gossip moment. We're talking around-the-clock coverage, breaking news alerts, hashtags trending every other day. Some folks are tuning in out of concern, others out of curiosity, but the energy around it is undeniable. People want to know if one of hip-hop's biggest icons is about to face a dramatic fall from grace, or if he'll come out of this untouched as he's managed to do so many times before. Whatever it was, this apology isn't official, but it is enough to get people talking. We've got the blog spinning with headlines like, Diddy apologizes in court. Is this his confession? Sean Combs finally cracks under pressure, but without context, the moment remains just that, a moment, and one that could be interpreted 100 different ways depending on what side of the story you already believed. But here's Here's where it gets interesting. Diddy has consistently pleaded not guilty to all charges and even rejected a plea deal that was offered to him on May 1st, 2025, just days before the trial began. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has made it crystal clear, stating that Diddy is an imperfect person, but he is not a criminal, and emphasized that his client is determined to fight these allegations in court to clear his name.
He's been looking forward to this day. He's been looking forward to clearing his name, and he's going to clear his name. And we're going to stand by his side as he does. We believe in him wholeheartedly. He didn't do these things.
That statement hit differently. An imperfect person, but not a criminal. It's the kind of line that's designed to hold space for public sympathy without admitting guilt. It acknowledges human flaws, sure, but draws a hard line between bad decisions and criminal behavior. That's a smart legal strategy, but it's also left people feeling uneasy. What exactly is being owned here? What's being denied? Besides, we're talking serious federal charges, including sex trafficking, racketeering conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Prosecutors allege that Diddy abused, threatened, and coerced women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct over decades, dating all the way back to at least 2008. The feds are basically accusing him of running what they call a criminal enterprise involving something called freak-off parties, where victims were allegedly coerced into sexual acts.
The freak-off sometimes lasted days at a time, involved multiple commercial workers, and often involved a variety of narcotics such as ketamine, ecstasy, and GHB, which Combs distributed to the victims to keep them obedient and compliant.
It's heavy. These aren't just accusations of misconduct or bad behavior at a party. These are allegations of a structured system of exploitation that prosecutors say was built to serve one man's desires and protected by money, fear, and silence. According to court documents, these freak-off parties weren't just wild nights. They were allegedly organized with intent. Victims claim they were drugged, manipulated, and threatened into performing sexual acts. Some say they felt trapped, afraid to speak out because of Diddy's power and reach. Others say they tried to come forward in the past but were paid off or silenced through intimidation. The trial is set to feature testimony from former employees, ex-girlfriends, security personnel, assistants, and industry insiders. People who were once part of his inner circle. People who saw the machine from the inside. And the prosecution is expected to argue that this wasn't a few isolated incidents, it was a pattern, a culture. So while that apology might not seem like a bombshell confession, the trial itself is shaping up to be one of the most high-profile celebrity court cases in years. The stakes are massive. Diddy's brand is already taking hits. Partnerships pulled. Sponsorships paused. Former associates distancing themselves. Even some artists under his label are issuing vague statements about standing with survivors. But what's even bigger is what this trial represents culturally. For years, there's been quiet chatter in the entertainment industry about the price of fame, the things people endure, overlook, or stay silent about to stay close to power. This trial is dragging some of that silence into the light. It's no longer whispers in green rooms or cryptic interviews. It's sworn testimony, federal documents, and live updates.
The biggest secret in the entertainment industry that really wasn't a secret at all has finally been revealed to the world. The wall of silence has now been broken, and victims are coming forward.
And let's be honest, a lot of people are struggling with how to process it. Diddy isn't just a celebrity, he's a cultural icon. The man behind countless hits, careers, and moments in hip-hop history. For a whole generation, he represents ambition, reinvention, and success. But now that legacy is under serious threat. Some fans are holding on, saying the system is trying to tear down another successful black man. Others believe this moment is long overdue, that the industry has protected powerful men for too long, and that it's finally time to hold people accountable regardless of their fame. The apology, if that's even what it was, may have been subtle, but it stirred something. It reminded everyone that beneath the headlines, behind the cameras, there's a man on trial. A man whose actions are being picked apart in real time. A man who might lose everything. So yeah, the apology isn't the story. It's just a flashpoint in a much bigger narrative. The real story is the trial itself and what it uncovers. Not just about Diddy, but about the culture that allowed someone with that much power to operate without serious consequences for so long. The shocking allegations and evidence against Diddy. So what exactly is Diddy being charged with? The indictment, which was unsealed back in September 2024, includes some heavy accusations. Diddy is facing 5 counts in total, including sex trafficking by force, fraud or coercion, racketeering conspiracy, and transportation to engage in prostitution. These aren't your average celebrity legal troubles. We're talking federal charges that come with penalties as serious as life imprisonment if he's convicted. The prosecution is basically alleging that Diddy wasn't just a successful music mogul, but that he Diddy was running what they call a criminal enterprise for decades. According to the indictment, this alleged operation dates back to at least 2008, but some of the civil lawsuits against him include accusations dating all the way back to the 1990s. The feds claim Diddy used this enterprise to abuse, threaten, and coerce women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his conduct. One of the wildest parts of these allegations revolves around what prosecutors are calling freak-off parties. According to court documents, these were basically drug-fueled sexual events that sometimes lasted for days.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the performances, which he called freak-offs.
The indictment describes these freak-offs as organized events where victims were allegedly coerced into sexual acts, often filmed, and sometimes given IV fluids afterward to recover from the physical exertion and drug use. I'm not even making this up, y'all. This is straight from the court documents. But the allegations don't stop there. The prosecution has identified 4 victims in the indictment, referred to as Victim 1 through Victim 4, to protect their identities. 3 of these victims have been allowed to testify anonymously, which gives you an idea of how serious this case is. Their accounts allegedly detail patterns of coercion and abuse at these freak-off parties.
As alleged, when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs, and that Combs hit, kicked, threw objects at, and dragged victims, at times by their hair.
Now, you might be wondering what kind of evidence the prosecution has to back up these crazy allegations. Well, one of the most significant pieces is a surveillance video from 2016 that CNN published back in May 2024. This footage allegedly shows Diddy violently assaulting his ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, in a hotel hallway. This video caused a huge controversy when it first came out, and it's expected to be a central piece of evidence in the trial. Speaking of Cassie Ventura, her story plays a major role in this whole situation. In November 2023, Ventura filed a civil lawsuit against Diddy, alleging rape, sex trafficking, and years of abuse.
And the claim is that during their relationship, he was physically abusive, that he required or demanded that she perform certain sexual acts with other people while he was there, and that he in fact raped her shortly before she left him.
The lawsuit was settled literally the next day for an undisclosed amount, which raised a lot of eyebrows, but it triggered what some are calling a domino effect, with dozens more lawsuits following. In fact, according to reports, Diddy now faces over 70 sexual assault lawsuits. The Washington Post has even created a database tracking these lawsuits, noting patterns of non-disclosure agreements in the music industry that may have enabled this kind of behavior for years. The sheer number of accusations is absolutely staggering. Another major piece of evidence came from the raids on Diddy's properties in Los Angeles and Miami back in March 2024. During these raids, federal agents reportedly found over 1,000 bottles of baby oil, which became a major talking point in media coverage. While it might sound bizarre, prosecutors are presenting this as evidence of the scale of the alleged activities.
And they seized cases and cases of the kinds of personal lubricant and baby oil that Combs' staff allegedly used to stock hotel rooms for the freak-offs, more than 1,000 bottles altogether.
After those raids went down, something interesting happened. When that 2016 surveillance footage of Diddy allegedly assaulting inserted an image in the background, Cassie Ventura was released by CNN. Diddy actually issued a public apology on social media, which he later deleted, calling his behavior inexcusable and stating he was disgusted with himself. He said,
I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video.
This apology for the Cassie incident is not to be confused with the recent court apology for being nervous that sparked those misleading headlines we talked about in part 1. But it's worth noting that even after making this public apology about the assault video, Diddy's legal team has since challenged the video's admissibility in court, alleging it was substantially altered, a claim CNN denied. Talk about a complete 180. The timeline of events leading up to this trial is wild in itself. Following Cassie's lawsuit in November 2023 and those federal raids in March 2024, Diddy was arrested in New York and indicted on the current charges in September 2024. He's been held without bail at a Brooklyn jail ever since. The court has denied him bail 3 separate times, considering him a flight risk and citing concerns about potential witness tampering. Just days before the trial began, on May 1st, 2025, Diddy rejected a plea deal that could have reduced his sentence, choosing instead to go to trial to prove his innocence. This decision shocked many legal experts, given the mountain of evidence the prosecution claims to have. have. The current trial is presided over by Judge Arun Subramanian, who is a former clerk for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and a seasoned litigator. The jury selection process has been intense, with the court narrowing down 600 potential jurors to dozens. Prospective jurors were questioned about their knowledge of the case, exposure to media coverage, including that Cassie assault video, and potential biases. Some jurors even mentioned seeing the assault video or hearing baby oil jokes related to those raids. Adding to the high-profile nature of this case, celebrities like Kanye West, Michael B. Jordan, Mike Myers, and Michelle Williams were named as potential references in the trial. None of these celebrities are accused of any wrongdoing, but they might be mentioned during testimony or might have been present at events relevant to the case. Diddy's defense team, including attorneys Mark Agnifilo, Brian Steele, and Tenny Garagos, is pursuing what insiders call an aggressive defense strategy. They've sought to exclude the Cassie video and question the relevance of the baby oil evidence. They've also pushed for thorough jury selection, particularly around media exposure and attitudes toward people with multiple sexual partners. Perhaps most interestingly, court documents indicate a plan to have Dr. Eli Aoun, a Columbia professor, testify about a redacted mental condition that could potentially affect Diddy's guilt, though prosecutors are disputing its relevance. This suggests the defense might be preparing to introduce some kind of psychological or medical angle, although the specific details remain under wraps. Throughout all of this, Diddy's team has maintained that he is innocent of all charges. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has repeatedly stated that Diddy is an imperfect person, but he is not a criminal, emphasizing that their client wants to clear his name. They framed any interactions as consensual and part of what they describe as a swinger lifestyle, not criminal activity. But, and this is a big but, the number of accusers and the seriousness of the allegations paint a very different picture. With over 70 sexual assault lawsuits and federal charges that could put him away for life, Diddy is facing what might be the most significant legal battle of his entire career. Trial progress, defense strategy, and what's next. Now let's get into where the trial currently stands as of May 7, 2025, what defense strategies Diddy's team is using, and what we might expect in the coming weeks. So where exactly are we in this trial? The proceedings officially began with jury selection on May 5th, 2025, just 2 days ago at the time of this recording. According to the latest reports, as of May 7, 2025, 45 prospective jurors have been qualified, which was the court's target. This is a significant milestone in the trial process. The next major step will be what's called peremptory strikes, which are scheduled for Friday, May 9th, 2025. This is when both the prosecution and defense can remove potential jurors without giving a specific reason. The court will be dark, meaning no proceedings, on Thursday, May 8th, and then opening statements are set to begin on Monday, May 12th, 2025. The jury selection process itself has been intense, to say the least. The court started with about 600 potential jurors and has been narrowing them down through a rigorous questioning process. Potential jurors were asked about their knowledge of the case, whether they'd seen that viral video of Diddy allegedly assaulting Cassie Ventura, and if they had any biases that might affect their judgment. Some of the responses from potential jurors give us a glimpse into just how high profile this case has become. Several mentioned having seen the assault video, while others referenced hearing baby oil jokes related to the FBI raids on Diddy's properties. One juror even mentioned liking a comedian's video that joked about Diddy and baby oil, though they were deemed qualified after stating they could remain impartial. The court is aiming to select 12 jurors and 6 alternates for this trial, which is expected to last between 8 to 10 weeks. That's a long time, y'all. The trial is scheduled to run Monday to Friday, with the first week from 9:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. ET, and subsequent weeks from 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. ET. So we're looking at potentially going well into July before a verdict is reached. One interesting detail is that the first 3 witnesses have already been disclosed to the defense, though their identities haven't been made public. Speculation is running wild about who these witnesses might be, with many wondering if Cassie Ventura will be among the early testimonies. During the jury selection process, potential jurors were given a list of names that might come up during the trial, including Michael B. Jordan, Kid Cudi, Cassie Ventura, Michelle Williams, Mike Myers, Dallas Austin, Lauren London, and Dawn Richard. This suggests that testimony might touch on Diddy's extensive network in the entertainment industry. It's important to note, though, that none of these celebrities are accused of any wrongdoing. They might just be mentioned during testimony or might have been present at events relevant to the case. Diddy himself has been present in court throughout the proceedings so far. He's been granted permission to wear non-prison clothing during the trial, appearing in a blue sweater, white shirt, and glasses. Now let's talk about Diddy's defense strategy, because it's giving us some major clues about how his team plans to fight these charges. First and foremost, Diddy has pleaded not guilty to all charges and rejected a plea deal, signaling his intent to fight the allegations in court. His defense team have been aggressive in challenging the prosecution's evidence. One key aspect aspect of their strategy appears to be challenging the admissibility of that Cassie Ventura assault video, arguing that it was substantially altered. CNN has denied these claims, and Judge Subramanian has ruled the video admissible despite the defense's objections. This suggests the jury will indeed see this potentially damaging footage during the trial. Another interesting element is that the defense has filed motions to dismiss parts of the indictment, alleging racial targeting. They've also been focusing on jury selection, particularly around media exposure and potential biases, recognizing how the high-profile nature of this case could affect jurors' perceptions. Perhaps most intriguingly, court documents indicate a plan to have Dr. Eli Aoun, a Columbia professor, testify about a redacted mental condition that could bear on Diddy's guilt. This suggests they might be preparing to introduce some kind of psychological or medical defense, though prosecutors are disputing its relevance. Throughout all of this, Diddy's team has consistently maintained that he is innocent of all charges. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, has repeatedly stated that Diddy is an imperfect person, but he is not a criminal, emphasizing that their client wants to clear his name. They framed any interactions as consensual and part of what they describe as a swinger lifestyle, not criminal activity. So what happens next in this trial? Opening statements are scheduled to begin on Monday, May 12, 2025. This is when both the prosecution and defense will outline their cases to the jury, giving us a much clearer picture of the specific evidence and arguments we can expect throughout the trial. After opening statements, the prosecution will begin presenting their case, calling witnesses, and introducing evidence. The indictment focuses on 4 victims identified as Victim 1 through Victim 4, with 3 allowed to testify anonymously. Their testimony will likely be a central part of the prosecution's case. Other key evidence will likely include that 2016 hotel surveillance footage showing Diddy allegedly assaulting Cassie Ventura, which Judge Subramanian has ruled admissible. The FBI's discovery of over 1,000 bottles of baby oil during raids on Diddy's properties will also likely be presented as evidence. Once the prosecution rests its case, the defense will present its side, potentially including testimony from that Columbia professor about the redacted mental condition. They'll likely focus on undermining the prosecution's evidence and arguing that any interactions were consensual. After both sides present their cases, there will be closing arguments, and then the jury will deliberate to reach a verdict. Given the complexity of this case and the number of charges, deliberations could potentially take days. If convicted on all charges, Diddy faces extremely serious consequences. The most severe charges, racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, carry maximum sentences of life imprisonment. The sex trafficking charges also come with a mandatory minimum sentence of 15 years. The transportation to engage in prostitution charges each carry a maximum of 10 years. Beyond the criminal case, Diddy still faces those civil lawsuits, reportedly over 70 of them, alleging various forms of sexual misconduct. While these are separate from the criminal trial, the outcome of this case could potentially influence those civil proceedings. It's worth noting that this case has broader implications for the music industry as a whole. The Washington Post has pointed out that this case has sparked discussions about accountability in the music industry, particularly around non-disclosure agreements and power dynamics. Some see this as part of a larger reckoning similar to the #Me Too movement in Hollywood. The case has also drawn comparisons to other high-profile cases like those of Harvey Weinstein and R. Kelly, with prosecutors arguing that Diddy, like those men, used his wealth and influence to coerce and intimidate victims. The outcome of this trial could potentially set precedents for how similar cases are handled in the future. Despite all this happening, a recent May 1st report from Deadline revealed that Diddy is also facing additional lawsuits of a different kind. He's apparently filed defamation lawsuits against documentaries like Diddy, The Making of a Bad Boy, which came out in January 2025, claiming they advance conspiracy theories about him. The fact that he's pursuing these lawsuits while simultaneously defending himself against such serious criminal charges shows just how complex this legal battle has become. For the latest updates on this trial, many reputable sources are providing daily coverage. USA Today, The Independent, and BBC News are all offering detailed reporting on the proceedings. This trial represents one of the most high-profile criminal cases in the music industry in recent years, and its outcome could have far-reaching implications not just for Diddy himself, but for how the industry addresses issues of power, accountability, and abuse. And with that, we've come to the end of this deep dive. For more juicy content like this, smash that subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications, and check out the cards showing on your screen for more video. Don't forget to comment your thoughts below.